Shalom everyone, and today we're learning two parashot, Matot Mas'ei, the last two parashot in the book of Numbers. And Matot Mas'ei always fall within the period of the 3 weeks of judgments that started a few days ago on Thursday, and they're going to finish 21 days exactly after it started. So these 3 weeks of judgments, it's about one thing. How do we remove judgments from our lives? Now, for us to understand what does it mean, judgments, we have to understand that judgments are part of our lives. Without it, there's no life. However, to understand the deep meaning of judgment, because people say we want to live a life without any judgments, only love, only mercy, only kindness, everything is positive. We have to understand that judgment is a must in our lives, because you need, the same way you need endless light of the Creator, you need also boundaries. You need to create borders. You need to be able to overcome your inner drives, because you need to also give some measurement for the spiritual light flowing to our lives. And therefore you cannot have only right column, the same way you cannot only have the plus in electricity without a minus. We cannot have matter without electrons, only protons. It doesn't work. You need to have judgment. Although we have to understand that one of the real deeper meanings of the word din, judgment in Hebrew, is delay. Delay and boundaries. Can we imagine a world without delay and boundaries? We cannot, which means judgments do not need to be removed and cancelled. It's all about the concept. The major concept in Kabbalistic teaching is sweetening the judgments, which means how do we take the judgments that when they are just judgments alone, they are bitter, they are painful, they are negative, they are upsetting, they are sickening, they just basically stop the flow of life. How do you sweeten the judgment, which means give them the proper space, the right position, that without the judgments in our world, there's no life. Which means, can you imagine just a world that has no properties? Which means whatever you make belongs to everybody else. Who would bother making any fortune knowing that people are just waiting, just on the side till you're going to make any kind of money, and they're going to come and say, okay, give it to me. And you can't say no because no judgment. Okay? So we understand that judgment is not always misery. Judgment is about learning where to stop. And where to stop, that's a must know for happiness. Because if you don't know where to stop, you eat something and it's tasty and you don't know when to stop. Okay? That is lack of judgment, and the result will be sickness. Because if you eat without stopping, that will destroy your body. And I think you got the message. So the whole thing is not removing judgments, but to sweeten the judgments. And because the 3 weeks of judgments, they're not 3 weeks like people who understand the calendar, the Kabbalistic spiritual calendar, in a very kind of basic way. They just say, oh, these are 3 weeks of calamities and it's terrible and we have to freeze and do nothing because we're afraid so much of the judgment. If this is not judgment, and that's really cooperating with the judgment, because you become the judgment when you're so hysterical about the 3 weeks of judgment. I know these kind of people. So you have to be really careful about it. And to tell you the truth, since I learned that wisdom of Kabbalah, for me, the 3 weeks of judgments are very positive, because these are 3 weeks that demand you to stop, slow down, and focus on your spiritual goals in life, to focus on your spiritual advancement. Basically, when we come to the end of the reading of Parashat Matot and Mas'ei, like in this week, we are finishing the book of Numbers, and that means we're finishing to read the main body of the Torah. The book of Deuteronomy that we will start next week, that will be already Mishneh Torah. That's Moses making a summary of the whole Torah. And what does it mean that we finish the real body of the Torah this week? It means that if we have this kind of synchronicity between the pace of our tikkun and the Torah reading every cycle of every year, it means that when we are coming right now to the end of the book of Numbers, we are basically coming to the end of the major part of the tikkun process of each one of us of this year. From next week, when we started to read the book of Deuteronomy, we're basically starting the countdown to the new year, and that means we are like really making the auditing and a summary of the year, so we can start preparing ourselves for the coming year. So these weeks are very important, because dealing with judgments means also being able to balance our lives. So because these 3 weeks are very, very intense, and therefore we have to slow down the external rush and intensivity of making money, career, family issues, weddings, all of that stuff must slow down, so we can focus on the real internal thing, our soul. So since I realized that, I always see these 3 weeks as an amazing opportunity for spiritual growth, because you're basically forced to focus on what am I doing and what have I done this year. And I'm just basically starting to wrap up my year, so I can start to gain as much as possible in towards the finish line, before we starting the preparation of the coming next year. Okay, so I hope I made that point clear. And after realizing that, we can understand better the 2 parashot that usually are being read together, Matot and Mas'ei. Now, what is Matot? The word Matot is the staffs. You have chief of staff, and here we're talking about the heads of the staffs of the tribes of Israel. Okay, and they speak about vows, about nullifying vows. Now, if you read the text on the superficial level, you have a little problem, because it speaks over there about commitments. And now again, when you come to the end of the year, you have to really bring up all the commitments you made to yourself, all the vows you made to yourself, and you have to ask yourself, like, how much of it have I really manifested, and how much of what I committed for myself in the beginning of the year did I really follow? Because this is very important, because how do I look at myself when I'm looking at myself in the mirror? There's a very strong correlation between the fulfillment of my commitments and the way I see myself. A human being that makes commitments and really stick to his or her commitments, these kind of people, they have no problem to look at themselves in the mirror. But if you have commitments that you really made for yourself, let's say the beginning of the year, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the beginning of your life as an adult, when you really started to make goals, and you look at yourself in the mirror and you realize that basically there's no integrity and there's no honesty, because you're really busy with stuff that you know deep inside you didn't really commit for that, and you're simply somehow fooling yourself. Okay? This has to do a lot with our self-esteem, with more than that, with our happiness, with our well-being. Because when we do not really follow through, this kind of little voice that is saying, what is it for if that's not really fulfilling my real mission? What is that for if I'm not really fulfilling my goals, my true goals, my real commitments? Because it has nothing to do with the person I committed myself to become. So here we're talking about vows. And it says also, if you go to verse 3 in the book of Numbers chapter 30, it says, Ish ki idor neder l'Adonai, when a person makes a vow to God, or yishaveh shvuah, or makes a promise, le'esor isar nafsho, to forbid something to himself. Like, there are certain things I'm not going into. I'm never going to make lies. I'm never going to cheat people. I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to transgress any of the mitzvot written on the 2 tablets or whatever. I'm going to keep the road, which means the limits that I'm never going off those limits. Okay? לא יחל דברו ככל היוצא מפיו יעשה. Whatever comes out of your mouth, you should fulfill, and do not delay that. But what happens? And then it becomes weird. When a woman makes a vow in the house of her father, and there's a debate about it, like, when does a woman makes a vow and the father can nullify the vow? And it's like, when she is a little girl, her vows don't count. When she is a grown-up, she had her bat mitzvah, which is 12 years old, then she is independent. Her father cannot do anything about her vows because she's an independent human being. Okay? So when are we talking about? So that's really not practical. And then, so if she's married, her husband, and there is a certain thing, if her father or her husband nullify her vows, and then there's a very important message. Verse 4. If her father nullified her vows, okay, V'Adonai yislach la, and God will forgive her. And if that happens with her husband, okay, you have the same expression. Okay, so the question is, what is the message over here? Except from just learning about the vows, and the sages are asking a question, because when it says in verse number 2, chapter 30, Moses speaks to the heads of the staffs. Why here? He always spoke to the heads of the staffs, and they brought the message of the teaching to the rest of the nation. Why here? That has to be mentioned. And if you really studied Parashat Pinchas in the Zohar thoroughly, then a flash has to come on. And what's a flash? You go to verse 807 in the Zohar Pinchas, the commentary of the Sulam, and you cannot ignore what's written over there. And it speaks as follows. It speaks about the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. ובעשור לחודש השביעי, דיהו תשרי, on the 10th of the 7th month, which is the month of Tishrei in the Hebrew calendar, מקרא קודש יהיה לכם. It's a holy day for you that you call the holiness in. Da Yom HaKippurim, this is the Day of Atonement. Yom HaKippurim, דיהו עשירי, it is the 10th day. The letter Yud, because you know in Hebrew, every letter is also a number. So that's the letter Yud. Kalil Maseret Yemei Teshuvah, this is an inclusive day of all 10 days of reconnection, the days of Teshuvah. V'takinu Behei Tzelotin, and this day of Kippur, Yom Kippur, is a very, very special day in the Hebrew calendar. First of all, there are 5 daily prayers, while on weekdays you have 3 daily prayers. On Shabbat and holidays and Rosh Chodesh, 4 daily prayers. On Yom Kippur, it's the only day of the year you have 5 daily prayers, and long ones, very long ones. Okay? 5 prayers. Lechabra im ha'hei. So we know 5 is the Hebrew letter Hey. So you had Yud for 10, Hey for the number 5 prayers. My Mikra Kodesh, what does it mean calling the holiness in? Lafrasha le mishar yomim, to separate this day from other days. Deidbu pulchana dechol uveginda kol melechet avoda lo ta'asu. The Day of Atonement must be separated from all days of work, because this is something special, not just as Shabbat and holidays, there's something beyond that. Okay, and what is that special thing? So you can read it on the next verse, 808. דיומין דאית בהן בהון מלאכת חול, אינון מסיטרא דעץ הדעת טוב ורע. דהתהפך ממטה לנחש ומנחש למטה. לאכול חד כפום עבדוי, ודע ממתת, the angel Metatron, מטה. נחש סמך מם. אבל בהי יומא דיהו יום הכיפורים דיקרי קודש, שלטה אילנה דחיי, ולא ישתף ימי שטן ופגרה, ומסתרי לא יגורך רע, ובגינדה בין נייכין עבדין באילנה דחיי, ובין נפקן לחירות, בין נפקי מישור שלאום. Translation. First of all, this is one of the most powerful verses of the whole Zohar. And I translate, because the days that we work in those days, 6 days a week, except from Shabbat and holidays, these days belong to the tree of life, the tree of knowledge, which is made of good and evil. It's a mix of good and evil, and because of that, because it's a mix of good and evil, then the Zohar says something really important, שנתהפך ממטה לנחש מנחש למטה. During every day of the weekdays, because it's a mixture of good and evil, you have that kind of a seesaw that it can become in an instant from good to evil, and from a staff to a snake. This vision is being brought from the story of the Exodus, when Moses is facing that amazing revelation in front of the burning bush, and then Moses is saying, I'm going to come to Pharaoh and all his gang of warlocks. These guys are wizards of the first line, the best on the whole planet. Me alone against all of them? I learned over there, I know those magics, but I'm alone against all of them. What are you giving me? And God is saying, what is there in your hand? And so that a staff. Throw it down. He throws it down and it becomes a snake. So now Moses is running away. So God says, don't run away. Pick him up with his tail. And he picks him up in his tail, becomes back into a staff. And from here, and that's what Moses does in front of Pharaoh and his wizards. And that becomes kind of a vision explaining to us something that is so crucial in order to understand what life is really about. The weekdays, which means the days of work, the days of which we really have to focus on achieving our goals, they belong to the tree of knowledge, good and evil. And why is it like this? Because that's our job. Our tikkun is to turn the darkness into light and the bitterness into sweet. That's our job. Okay, however, here comes a vision that it is about choosing between the angel of all that is good, Metatron, which is compared over here to the mate, staff. And now you have to understand that in Hebrew the word mate means to tilt, which means to turn things into a certain direction. The person who's holding the staff has the power to change directions of any kind of a system. So when we're talking about the chief of staff, the head of the army, he is the person that directs the whole army towards a certain direction. Now the head of the staff of the tribe, he had the power to basically determine the direction. So we have over here two forces that are playing the major role in our daily life, which is we have to be the ones who take total responsibility to which way our life is going to. That's called mate. It's a staff, it's a wand, but it's really about how do we focus our desire towards the evil side of the tree of knowledge, good and evil, or are we going to turn it towards the direction of the tree of life? Who does that depends on? Only on our own decision. So when it says that every person during every day of our daily life, we need to realize and take responsibility that we have to take the direction. And how? When we choose what movie is running in our inner cinema. Is that a movie of the tree of life, which means a movie that is full of faith, certainty, love, mercy, and also self-control? Okay? If we can do that, then our lives, the direction of our lives is going to go closer and closer towards what is called the tree of life. However, if we are not taking responsibility, what happens is that we're going to find ourselves connected to the snake, says the Zohar. Who's the snake? The snake is the cause of all pain, suffering, misery, confusion that we experience, because that is the source of all of it, and the snake is an intrinsic part of our personality. Okay? What part of our personality is the snake? That part that incites us into emotions, thinking that are really obviously against our main important goals. Like, a question that I'm asking many times, you can have a whole room full of very intelligent people because they came to study. Okay? They got out of the comfort of their homes. They even pay money to listen and to learn how to improve their lives. And you ask those people, and you ask the smartest people in the world, how many of you guys find yourself knowing that certain things that you do are not very good for you. They're even bad for you. And you still can't stop doing those things. And if somebody will tell you that he never faces issues like this, he always does what's appropriate, he will be lying about other things too. Okay? Which means, why is it that we keep finding ourselves again and again and again doing stuff that we know is bad for us? Eating the wrong things, saying the wrong words, having the wrong emotions and letting them taking over us. Why are we doing that? And the answer is, it's called the snake, and we need to overcome the snake and turn him into a staff from failure to success. That means taking responsibility to every aspect of our lives. No one can do it overnight, but we have a whole lifetime for doing that. So, on the day of Yom Kippurim, which is called the holiness, Sholet bo etz hachaim, this is a day for the tree of life only. There's no Satan, no snake, no negativity in this day. It's all good. And therefore, on that day, which is totally into the tree of life, in that day the slaves can really rest. So yes, on Yom Kippur you're fasting, you're praying 5 long prayers, but you're resting from being subjugated to the snake, subjugated to darkness, subjugated to evil. On that day, this is the day to come out to freedom from all their chains. Who? All of us. All of us. Now listen carefully again. What did we say? Life is about either you're holding this snake by your hand and becomes a staff. That means you're starting to have some control over your life, or you're running away from it and you're just in denial that basically you have no enemies. It's all the enemy within, and you just deny your responsibility for taking care of it. Okay? This is one of the most amazing verses in the whole Zohar. So Yom Kippur is basically giving us the opportunity to rise above that staff a snake. And just a second, let's go back. וידבר משה לראשי המטות, and Moses is speaking to the heads of the staffs. Now, so the word staff appears over here, and it appears also about Yom Kippur. What's the connection? If you read the next verses, verse 809, you get the answer. Those people that there is a decree hanging over their head, beneder uvishvua, with a vow and a promise not to change the decree. For that, the prayer of Kol Nidrei have been established, which means that on Yom Kippur we can annul the vows. Which vows? We thought it's about vows we made. No, the Zohar says no, these are different vows. And here he speaks about annulling the vows that are basically the decrees that are supposed to basically hit us in the coming year, God forbid. So why? So you see the connection between a staff and a vow. And what does it say? It says that we humans have the power to change the direction of negativities and any kinds of decrees or curses that might be making their way to us. And we have the ability to change the direction, lehatot. When you change the direction of a flowing river, you use the same verse, the same verb. When you change the direction of a missile, you're using the same verb. Lehatot, mate. Mate is a noun, a staff, but it's also a verb. Changing the direction of something of power. So, this parasha Matot is telling us, teaching us the main secret when we do teshuvah, which is translated wrongly into English as repentance, but the real meaning of it in Hebrew means reconnecting to our goals, to our original goals, which means we're not here to get even with anyone. We're not here to be right. We're not here to be upset about anyone or criticize anyone. We're here to receive God's light, nothing else. And we're here to direct our lives towards a life that is full of real true freedom to enjoy. That's called the tree of life. And it's all about that consciousness. So in Parashat Matot, we're getting here amazing power, because think about it. Parashat Matot is always during the 3 weeks. And some sages are saying that if we count the 3 weeks, it's 21 days. Okay, 21 days is also the number of holidays you have in the Hebrew calendar. So you have 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, 1 day of Yom Kippur, that's 3, 7 days of Sukkot, basically it's 8. So we have already 11. Okay, 7 more days. We have a Passover, so that's 18. Is it 18? Yes, 18. Then you have Shavuot, 19. 1 day for Purim and 1 day for Chanukah, because Chanukah is not a real 8 days holiday, because you can work all days of Chanukah. So you have 21, which means that the 21 days of the 3 weeks have the equal power of all the other holidays of the year. Which means we have, during these 3 days, of course, we have Yom Kippur, and which means potentially we have the ability to do here the job that if we do it today, in this week, we don't have to do it on Yom Kippur. Okay? And how do I tilt the direction, transform, change the direction of the forces of my life towards the tree of life from the tree of knowledge? And here comes the next thing. And the next thing is about chapter 31 in the book of Numbers. וידבר אשר משה לאמור, נקום את נקמת בני ישראל מאת המדיינים. And God speaks to Moses, telling him, take revenge from the Midianites. We already spoke about it in the previous parasha, Parashat Pinchas. You see, we have that issue with the Midianites from the beginning of the month of Tammuz. Because the Midianites that we're talking about, we're now talking about a nation that nobody knows who exactly they've been. And nobody knows what happened to them, because there are no Midianites today. So what's in it for me? So I explained in the last 2 portions that appears in the month of Tammuz, Cancer. This is a month that we have to take revenge from the judgments. And the root for the word Midian is din, judgment. And the Midianites, they had 5 kings, corresponding to the 5 major judgments that every text of Kabbalah is speaking about. 5 major judgments. Those are 5 major chasadim, okay, love and kindness. But 5 and 5 gives you 10 sefirot. Okay, but these 5. So how do we, of the Midianites, we are talking about fighting our own judgments. And really, if we are really, really honest, and we're really thinking deep inside, If we could control our inner judgments, and instead of being critical and criticize always other people's wrongdoing, instead we turn that mate to criticize our own criticism and calm it down and sweeten those judgments. Which means, if we did that, how would that improve our past year, past life? Of course, everything would be much better when we, instead of trying to be right, we're trying to be kind. Okay? For sure, that could make a big difference. Or instead of feeling very, very guilty or incapable and criticizing ourselves and bringing ourselves to a very low self-esteem, if we stop that criticism also and become more kind to ourselves, what would have happened with our relationships, with our performance in different aspects of our lives? Family, friends, community, business, anything. So if we had the ability to transform the direction of all of these judgments and sweeten them, of course, those judgments that are hurting us so much would have become great victories. It's not too late. This is the time of the year that now we can still turn those judgments into victories. We can still transform and change the way we feel about whatever hurt us before. So this is the real revenge. And that's why when we come to the Zohar of this parasha, the Zohar of this parasha is only 6 verses. That's it. There are only 6 verses, and it's basically 2 sides of 1 page. Okay, in the Zohar with the commentary. And what does it speak about? The focus is about men and women. Men as the white color, chesed, kindness, the energy of giving, and women as red color, judgment. And the Zohar says, no, we're not talking about genders, we're talking about forces. The forces of judgment and the forces of chesed, loving kindness. And basically you cannot have only one of them, because only one of them is imbalanced. So our job is to direct the flow of energy so we can synthesize the red with the white, the judgment with the mercy and kindness. So when you see something wrong, instead of going into inflammation that creates heartaches and heart diseases and all kinds of other terrible issues, instead of that, finding the kindness and the love so you can sweeten the judgment and turn them into a power of creativity. You see something that is wrong, first of all, sweeten the judgments. And that means having faith that if I see something wrong, it means probably I'm here to fix it, not to be annoyed by it. Being annoyed by it, being frustrated by that, or even being angered by that, that's not my job. My job is to correct the snake. Okay? It's not about joining forces with the snake. The snake made things wrong, and I'm right now very inflamed about how wrong it is, which bringing nothing to anyone, no value to anyone. So the Zohar is speaking about again what the Zohar of Parashat Balak. We're starting with Chukat, all the parashot of Tammuz, the month of Cancer. It's all about how do you take the judgments, the negativity, and you sweeten it and you turn it into healing. You're not denying it, you're not avoiding it, you do not erase it, you use it. The red heifer, okay? The Midianites, which is mentioned in Balak, in Parashat Pinchas, and here again in Parashat Matot. It's all about that. And if we continue with the Torah story of Parashat Matot, after the war with the Midianites, we come to chapter 32. And here there's a very amazing story. Why I'm saying amazing? Because the story is like this. The promised land was defined, has been defined as the land between the Jordan and the sea. Okay? How do we know? Moses, it's being emphasized, he never entered the promised land. However, he died, or he ascended to heavens, while he was on the eastern part of the river Jordan, which means the eastern part of the river Jordan is not considered in the Bible as the promised land. However, in this story, the tribes of Gad, Reuven, and half of Manasseh decide to settle in the eastern part of the river Jordan, and it becomes, because of that, the promised land. And you ask the question, what happened to you guys? Hundreds of years of slavery in Egypt, Mount Sinai revelation, all the miracles, and you're just at the gates of the promised holy land, and you don't want to come in? You want to stay outside? And so for centuries later, until today, that part of that those tribes settled in the eastern part of the river Jordan is considered also the promised land, the holy land, according to the Jewish law. So how come they did it? And how come they didn't want to come into the promised land? Why did they insisted so much to stay on the eastern bank? And when you study the Arizal is saying it's all about one thought. When you're talking about the tribe of Reuben, Reuben was the firstborn of Jacob. The firstborn, you read it according to Dari, is getting the big share in the legacy and the being an heir from the father which is Israel, Jacob. Reuben is not getting. The one who's getting 2 shares is Joseph. He gets 2 shares, Manasseh and Ephraim. Okay? The firstborn is supposed to get the kingdom. No, Reuben did not get the kingdom. Judah got the kingdom. The firstborn is supposed to get the priesthood. No, Levi got the priesthood. And not just this, Reuben stays outside on the east side of the river Jordan. Why? And the Ari says it's all because of one moment. Remember, how was Reuben born? When Jacob wanted to marry Rachel, he worked for her for 7 years, and on that night of the wedding, Lavan replaced Rachel with her sister Leah. Both Jacob and Rachel know that Lavan is going to cheat them. So they had some secret codes to replace under the chuppah in the wedding, so Jacob knows if it's really Rachel. But when she realized that she's not going to marry him that night, on one hand, Rachel was devastated because that was her only major dream, to marry Jacob. But she was also worried about her sister, that she will be ashamed during the wedding ceremony in front of the whole congregation when Jacob realizes that she has no idea about the signs, and he will simply destroy the wedding and she will be ashamed in public. So Rachel gives the secret signs to Leah. So that night, when Jacob is with Leah, he's totally sure this is Rachel because she gave him the signs. Only in the morning, he wakes up and he realizes that this is Leah. Who was born because of that night? Reuben. Where was the Zohar is asking, where were the thoughts and the intentions of Jacob that night? He was totally focused in Rachel to bring the soul of Joseph to the world. And who came out? Reuben. Says the Ari, there was a blemish. And you can see it in the blessing to the tribes. When Jacob is saying to Reuben, you're like water, because when I had all my intentions to bring a soul of Joseph to the world, and I was with Leah, I knew it, I'm with Rachel. So what's left for you? Water. So Reuben, there was a blemish because the thought of Jacob could not be completed only when he married Rachel later on. That power came and manifested finally when Joseph was born. What's left for Reuben? Which means the whole course of history have been tilted, changed course, mate, towards a place in which Reuben had to stay outside. When the Assyrians came, Reuben and Gad and half of Manasseh, they were the first ones to go to exile and disappeared. The first ones to disappear. So what about Gad? The tribe of Gad, same story. Similar. It looks like Leah did not understand. After she gave birth to 4 sons, she did not get pregnant anymore. Not for a while. So she decided to give Jacob her maid, Zilpah. But she didn't tell Jacob. One night when Jacob is coming to Leah's tent, Zilpah is in the tent and Jacob is so sure this is Leah. Gad is coming out, the tribe of Gad. And when he's born, it's a boy and she's so happy. She says, Ba Gad, we're lucky. But the way it's written in the Torah is Bagad. Instead of 2 words, Ba, Bet Aleph, Gad, Gimel Dalid. We are having good fortune. It says Bagad, Bet Gimel Dalid. The Aleph falls, the Aleph that is a symbol of the light, falls, and what's left is Bagad, treason. So the tribe of Gad has also a blemish. And they stayed also outside. So what about half of Manasseh? So the Arizal is explaining. When Dinah was there in the city of Shechem, and the son of the leader of Shechem sees her, and he rapes her and she gets pregnant. And a girl is born, Osnat, Asenat. And Jacob is afraid that she'll be killed by some of the hot-blooded brothers, because that's a shame to the family. So he puts her under a bush and he prays to God that she'll find the right place. She finds a way that baby into Potiphar's home, and he had no children. He adopts her, he raises her, and finally, when Joseph is becoming that great Joseph in Egypt, and he needs to find a wife because everybody's hurting him, he can't be alone, and he finds out that Asenat is not the biological daughter of Potiphar, but she's the biological daughter of his sister, half sister, Dinah. So she's half niece, and she is the granddaughter of his father. So she's family. He marries her, but the Arizal is saying there was still that blemish of the rape, and that came in his first son Menashe. And that's why when Jacob blesses the two sons, if you remember the story, he put his right hand on the young one Ephraim and the left hand on the older one Menashe. And Joseph is trying to change, and Jacob again, read the story in the end of the book of Genesis. He says, it's okay. I know, my son, I know. Why? Because the Menashe got, there is a saying, part of the blemish of the rape of Dinah. That part went by half of Menashe staying on the East Jordan. What do you mean? That centuries later, one thought changed the course of history, which means we have to have total responsibility and awareness how powerful thoughts are and how responsible we should be to our thoughts, because thoughts are the most powerful thing in the universe. They basically are what's changing the course of the events. It's all about the thoughts. So here it is, we have to choose, especially those 3 weeks. Instead of being, oh, it's the 3 weeks of judgment, this is the time to correct, to turn the judgments into kindness, into faith, into love, into appreciation, into commitment. And that's very important. And now we're coming to Parashat Masei. And Parashat Masei, which is the sealing portion, not just of the book of Numbers, but it's sealing the whole major books of the Torah, because as we said, the book of Deuteronomy is already Moses' last speech before he leaves a physical mundane world. So that's Moses' teachings. It's not God's words, because when you come to the end of Parashat Masei, the end of the book of Numbers, what does it say? The last words, are very clear. The book of Numbers, chapter 36, verse 13. Ele hamitzvot v'mishpatim, these are the precepts and the laws, asher tziva Adonai b'yad Moshe, that God ordered in the hand of Moses, El Bnei Israel, to the children of Israel, Ba'arvot Moav, in the prairies of Moav, Al Yarden Yericho, over the Jordan of the river Jordan in front of Jericho. Which means this is basically the sealing of the major part of the body of the books, the 5 books of the Chumash. Okay? So, Ele Masei, these are the journeys, and how many journeys are there? 42. Why 42? And that leads us to one of the most powerful teachings in the Torah, and that's the story of this is a story of the name of 42 letters, which is exactly again the same issue. What are the tools we can use in order to sweeten the judgments? Can everybody see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you see the next slide?
Yes.
Okay. So, our sages are teaching us a really great secret that the 42 first letters of the creation, Genesis chapter 1 verse 1, בראשית ברא אלוהים את השמיים ואת הארץ, והארץ הייתה תוהו ובוהו. Translated to English, miserably, poorly, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth was chaos. Okay? There's nothing between what's written and the translation, but everybody knows that translation. Okay, but the first 42 letters in the book of Genesis, in the creation, these are the letters. And there is a very, very secretive formula that transforms these 42 letters into what is called the name of 42 letters. That this is one of the most powerful sequences of letters that were ever presented to humans. Okay? You can see it in the left column. You see on the top of the left column, you can see 7 sequences of 6 letters each, which means the 42 letters are divided into 7 sequences. Each one of them has a unique force of its own. And when you go to the ancient books of secrets of the Torah, you can find them all over. But that was a secret. And when we're talking about the ancient times, when we're talking about especially the 1st and 2nd centuries CE, the great sages were called Tanaim at that time, the ones who wrote the Mishnah and the Zohar, they also realized that these 42 letters must be concealed because we are heading into a dark era, what we call today the Dark Ages, in which wisdom is going to be totally being stepped on, burned, persecuted, and so on. So the legend is saying that Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana, one of the great sages, although this is not really clear, he wrote a prayer that the sequence that we see on the left, the sequence of the name, what is called the name of 42 letters, this is the acronym of that prayer. This prayer appears in every Jewish prayer book. However, in the last centuries, they are even being printed the way you can see it in front of you, which means you see the words on the top right. You see Ana bekoach gedulat yeminecha tatir tzeuah. That's the first line. And on left, and then in front of it, you see Aleph Bet Gimel Yud Tav Tzadik, which is the acrostics of these letters, of these words. Okay, so if you can see, you see that most prayer books have it, but most people either do not have any idea what does it mean, or they just skip that because it's not a very important prayer. And what we learn from the Zohar, from the Arizal, and many other Kabbalists, this is one of the most important prayers ever. Which means when you start your day, you need to basically take a hold on the staff of changing the course of judgments into balance and mercy. And if you want to do that, you need to use the name of 42 letters. And that means do not start your day without it. Okay? So this is the Ana Bekoach prayer. So don't start your day without it. Now, what are the major secrets and powers behind it? First of all, you have 7 sequences. Each one of them corresponds to one of the 7 days of the week, according to the days, which means the first sequence, Ana Bekoach Gdulat Yeminecha, this is Sfirat Chesed, Aleph Bet Gimel Yud Tav Tzadik, and that rules over the first day of the week, which is known in English as Sunday. But in Hebrew it's Yom Rishon, the first day. The next one is the second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day, and the last and seventh sequence, this is Shabbat. Shabbatenu kabel ushma tzakatenu yodea talumot shin kuvav tzadik yutav. This is ruling over Shabbat. Not just that. The 7 planets are also being ruled by these sequences, while the first sequence, Aleph Bet Gimel Yutav Tzadik, has the power to rule over planet Saturn. The second one, Kuf Reish Ayin Sitet Nun, rules over Jupiter, Tzedek. The third one rules over Mars. The fourth one over the Sun. Fifth one over Venus. Sixth one over Mercury. And the seventh one over the Moon. Which means if you really want what's behind it, you can find it on our site, on our channel, on YouTube. You can find it in the lectures about the zodiac signs. Okay? So what else do we have over here? First of all, why 42? Where is this number from? There are many ways to approach it, and it's not that one is instead of another. They're just completing each other. Okay? Let's start with the first explanation. Whenever we need a liftoff, whenever we are finding ourselves stuck in delay, judgments, negativity, stress, trouble, blockages, whatever, the Ana Bekoach prayer and the meditation of the name of 42 letters, that's the tool, one of the major tools. And why? So the Kabbalists are saying, whenever you want to raise yourself from Olam Asiyah, the physical, mundane, elusive realm, to Olam Yetzirah, the realm of real spirituality, you use that name of 42 letters. And how can you see it? It's like, a child is stuck in trouble. So he's screaming, "Daddy, Daddy, please help me." And Daddy, from up from heaven, is sending 3 hands to lift him off. And these are the 3 hands that God is sending down to lift the nation of Israel out from the bondage in Egypt. There is the Hayad Hagdolah, the great hand, Hayad HaChazakah, the strong hand, Hayad HaRamah, the upper hand. Those 3 symbols, 3 hands. In Hebrew, Yad is a hand, but it's also a number, 14. 3 times 14 is 42. So whenever you feel that you're stuck in certain kind of a bondage, trouble, stress, and you need Daddy to lift you off and release you to freedom, Ana Bekoach, use the name of 42 letters. Just can say it again and again, or say it slowly with a lot of meditation. You'll find a way. Just use it. You get a lift off. And why not 2 hands? Because 2 hands, you can fall over. 3 hands is the most stable way to lift somebody beyond, up and beyond. So first of all, number 42 is the 3 hands. 3 times 14. But it looks like it's not only. When Moses is asking God, who should I say sent me? And God says, I am who I am. He didn't say so. He said, but everybody remembers it the way it's translated into English. He said, Eheye Asher Eheye. Okay, which means something else, but the name of God appears over here, Eheye. This is the name of deliverance. God's name of deliverance. Deliverance from bondage. And he said it twice. Why? Because twice, Eheye. Eheye, numerical value 21. 2 times 21, Eheye Asher Eheye, 42. Again, getting out of bondage. 42. Okay? And there's another way to reach 42. When we are talking about reaching the higher levels, really high levels, when we look at the way to reach Olam Atzilut, so there is a system of permutations of letters. That you take the holy name of God, Tetragrammaton, Yud Kei Vav Kei, Tetragrammaton, the name of 4 letters, and you spell it out. It's called Milui, which means when you say Yud, you hear the name Yud Vav Dalet. Say Hey, you hear Hey Yud. Say Vav, there's Vav Yud Vav. You hear Hey, Hey Yud. Together you get a new name, the spelled out name of God. This name has 10 letters. When you spell it out again in the same way, which means every letter you write the name of that letter, you get Yud, Yud Vav Dalet, Vav Yud Vav Dalet Lamed Taf, and so on. In this spell out, you get 28 letters. 4 plus 10 plus 28 gives you 42. Again, which means, again, you have the power of raising ourselves from the physical mundane world into the world of pure spirituality. Again, number 42. One of the major tools of raising someone, some people, everybody, to the upper worlds is the Kaddish. When do we use Kaddish? Kaddish is a prayer in Aramaic that is being said between the different parts of the prayer. Kaddish is being said also by the mourners after their relative that passed away. Okay? The Kaddish, which means Kaddish is a mean to elevate someone to the upper realms. Okay? It's a liftoff. And how the Kaddish is structured, so the Arizal is teaching us. The first line of the Kaddish, It Gadal V'Itkadash Shemei Rabbah, has 4 words. The second line of the Kaddish, Ba'alma Divra Kirutei V'Amlich Malchutei V'Atzmach Ukanei V'Yikare Meshichei, has 10 words. And the third part, Yeheh Shmei Rabbah Mevarach Lalam Lamei Almaya Yitbarach V'Yishtabach V'Yitpar V'Yitoma V'Yitase V'Yitadar till Be'alma, 28 words. Again, we have the same pattern, 4, 10, 28. Lift off. You thought it's all? No. In the middle of it, you have 7 words that it looks like it's 7 verbs. וישתבח, ויתפאר, ויתרומם, ויתנשא, ויתהדר, ויתעלה, ויתהלל. Those 7 verbs, each one of them has 6 letters. 7 times 6, 42, corresponding to the name of 42 letters. Each one of these 7 verbs starts with a Vav. The letter Vav is the number 6. 7 words starting with a Vav, 47 all over again. So, when do you say Kaddish? When we want to have a liftoff from one world to another. When somebody passed away. So on the way, in the funeral, on the way to the grave, we say the Ana B'Koach. You just, all over the world, when you have a Jewish funeral, traditional Jewish funeral, you have the Ana B'Koach. And on the grave, Kaddish. And then the mourners are saying Kaddish for the next 11 months. And every year on the Yortzeit, on the day of anniversary. Again, why? To achieve a liftoff for the soul of the person who passed away. Okay? But that's not enough. As a backup system, the most powerful prayer, in the biblical sense, is the Shema Yisrael. The Shema Yisrael, after the first 2 lines, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, ברוך שם ומלכותו לעולם ועד. Then we have a paragraph from the Torah. ואהבת את השם אלוקיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. That paragraph has 42 words corresponding to the 42 letters of the name of the 42. Okay? And then in the Amidah, silent prayer, the first blessing again has 42 words. Again, which means one of the major tools we have to lift ourselves above the chaos, the pain, the suffering, the judgment is the name of 42, and this is a great opportunity for all of us to adopt it. In Jewish tradition, that was always part of the symbolic part was so strong that you could find jewelry, embroideries, art pieces for homes, for synagogues with the name of 42 letters. Whoever can read the Hebrew, you can find this is a jewelry that is the original is in the Israel Museum, and you can that's from Afghanistan in the 16th century, and you see Aleph Bet Gimel, Yud Tav Tzadik, Kuf Reish Ayin, Sin Tet Nun, the whole name of 42 letters in this piece of jewelry. These are basically meditative charts that are hanging till today in many synagogues, old-fashioned synagogues all over the world, and in each one of them you'll find the name of 42 letters, sometimes in the shape of a menorah, sometimes as the frame of the menorah. Okay, so we learned a lot of tools, how to overcome negativity, how to deal with these 3 weeks, and it's all about healing, not just the body, but also the soul. Thank you so much, and have a great, successful week.